The idea of being westernized is common when someone is born in the Americas. But what this documentary is going to cover is not about the United States, rather, other countries who have been shaped and have their roots in Europe. Imperialism was a strategy many European countries used. It's when a nation extends their influence to other territories. Colonialism is when a foreign power directly controls another territory, usually through establishing colonies, and neocolonialism uses previously established colonies to put pressure on other independent countries. Through imperialism, colonialism, and neocolonialism, both negative and positive effects could be seen, but the impact Western ideas had on the people and nations during the 20th century were mostly for the worse. As you will see, white missionaries suppressed Kenyan culture, the Nazis' invasion into the Soviet Union was driven by Western ideas, and the Cambodian genocide was a result of the radical fear of the West. The west of Kenya was self-sufficient, abundant, and thriving according to Joseph Thompson in the book Worries of the Heart by Kenda Mutangi, a geologist coming all the way from Scotland to be the first European to step foot onto Kenya's fertile soil in 1883. He described Kenyan people themselves as friendly, but then why did this land of milk and honey change for the worse? It started back in 1894. The first administrative center was established in the Mumias. Charles Hobley was to take charge of the center. He worked for the IBEC, Imperial British East African Company, and served as their administrator. When the company failed, it surrendered to the Royal Charter in 1895, and the Colonial Office took over IBEC.
The reason for this? The Colonial Office set its eyes on Mumias because it was on the border of Uganda. Establishing themselves in Mumias helped them secure access to the country. To do this, the Colonial Office established the Mumias as the main trade post into Uganda, and it was successful. By the end of 1895, there were several coastal traders. The trade brought new foods such as sugar, oil, and avocados. This helped increase population rates, brought new technology, and spread the concept of materialism. Even though colonization had some positive effects, when asked if, do you believe technology in places like Africa would have been possible without colonization, 55% of the respondents answered yes, while only 27% answered no. The main belief was that places like Kenya had their own technology and didn't need the interference from Europeans.
But the Colonial Office didn't stop there. They also created lines, towns for Christian converts, missionaries, schools, and gold mines. This didn't happen to Kenya alone. Other countries like South Africa experienced it as well, maybe even worse, as the legal system was set in place. According to the National Party's color policy, once the whites settled down into Africa, the National Party of South Africa put out a new policy, an apartheid. They claim that its aim is the maintenance of the European population of the country as a pure white race. White people were seen as superior and should be preserved. They also received more funding and the rights to land. People who fell into the color category were in the midst of this chaos. In the film Skin, colored children never seemed to fit in one place. Even though there were equal parts white and black, they were accepted into neither communities. Many parents wanted their colored children to be classified as white so they could attend better schools in public areas, but that wasn't always granted. This was the reality for many. In Nairobi, Kenya, for example, residents were separated by Europeans, Asians, and Africans. It wasn't until the 1960s that the UN stepped in and helped colonies gain their independence. On December 14, 1960, a General Assembly was held. According to the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, most UN member nations voted in favor of the Declaration. The 9 that abstained were all imperialist countries, including the United States, Great Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal. Even though these countries were now free, neocolonialism made it so that it prevented the countries from growing internationally through trade, impeding social and cultural aspects of daily life.
The early to mid-1900s were a time of rapidly changing and growing ideas. The old establishment of empires and kingdoms was collapsing rapidly, giving way to new concepts. Among these most prominently was communism and fascism. These ideologies fundamentally opposed one another in societal, political, and economic policy. This would soon come to a head in World War II. Germany was run by the Nazi Party, a fascist government with ethno-supremacist ideologies. All races were in a pyramid. Aryan Germans were the highest, and Slavs, the people of Russia, Serbia, and beyond, were some of the lowest. In addition, any communist and Nazi ideology was unfit to live as they were considered less than human.
This would be on full display with the commencement of Operation Barbarossa, the Nazis' ultimate plan of conquering the Soviet Union. This invasion was unlike others, as they did not seek simply to seize land and resources, but to destroy an entire culture, erase ethnicity off the map, and force those that survived to conform to what the Nazis wanted. Each army had a dedicated force of around 1,000 men, whose entire job and purpose was to execute undesirables so that the army didn't waste time killing them. These were the Einsatzgruppen. They were mobile killing groups, efficiently and mercilessly identifying and slaughtering everyone in their wake. In total, there are around 3,000 Einsatzgruppen, but estimates report they killed over 2 million people, men, women, and children, all for their beliefs or their ethnicity. As disgusting and completely abhorrent as this is, it is neither a new concept, nor is it one that has been destroyed. Before the Nazis, people of color, Semitic people, were persecuted and massacred. This was merely the culmination of these Western concepts, and it would not be the end of it. The following is an interview with someone who understands and has a deeper grasp of how society is impacted.
Hello, my name is Justin Spencer. I'm the band director here at University City High School.
How have outside ideas changed traditional cultures around the world?
I would say that traditions are something that people hold on to for identity, for their social identity, for their cultural heritage identity. But sometimes, as time progresses, any outside ideas sometimes can find their way in traditions and not seek to remove or replace anything about traditions, but take those elements of what those traditions are and pretty much, I guess, maybe put them on a different platform, give them a new a new perspective, a new way of looking at it, but essentially having the same core principles.
How can powerful ideas lead nations or people into conflict?
Powerful ideas can find their way to people that sometimes are in need of resources, social connection, and it can be easy to manipulate, for lack of a better word, people that are in need of those things, because your powerful idea, if it aligns with what those needs are of those people, you can kind of take control of their I guess what their motivations are. You can kind of take control of that. And
lastly, why do some groups or governments fear Western influence?
think about the nature of whatever the influence is. Sometimes it's kind of like once you get one thing in the door, figuratively speaking, then that opens the door for even more things. And if a particular country or group government is like, we don't want to bring in any Western influence, then that means that some things, like as far as how the Western influence does medicine or health, money, things like that, those things can really shape how that can shape policy, really, because people are looking to have their needs met by the government in some form or fashion. So, once they allow one idea to kind of funnel in, it can mean that we want to overturn the old ways of thinking and just clearly go into the Western direction. But over time, we have seen that the Western influence can, once they find out, that there's a group or government country trying to be like them, they'll try to infiltrate and say and just kind of put more influence on it to the point where they can control and take resources. So that's kind of a slippery slope. It can be dangerous in that type of mindset. The Western influence, some people just want to protect from that because it's too controlling. Also, it could be kind of wild, as far as you don't know, like what group or what company wants to come in and just be around your group. It's it can be kind of a slippery slope like that.
Cambodia is a nation in Southeast Asia, which during the mid-late 19,000s was embroiled by brutal civil war, ending with a group known as the Khmer Rouge taking power, led by Pol Pot. The Khmer Rouge was a radical communist group, and Pol Pot sought to remake the country from the ground up in his twisted idea of utopian society. He reset the calendars to year zero, expelled thousands of people from the cities into the countryside, forcing them to farm and labor, whilst also separating children from families to become laborers and soldiers. This is identical to the suffering of Ishmael Bea in the book A Long Way Gone, where he is raised as a child soldier. All around is death, suffering, and chaos, with the loss of a child's innocence as they are subjected to a brutal regime, forced to fight and labor against their will. Both stories tell how political conflict and ideologies can impact and destroy innocent lives.
This was Pol Pot's goal, to strip the nation of all signs of what he deemed as westernization and rebuild it from the ground up, destroying anything associated with these ideals. People with education and degrees were killed. People who worked skilled trades were killed. People who wore glasses were killed. Anybody with a seeming taint of Western ideas was executed, culminating in over 1/4 of the population dying, just under 2 million people.
With all Western ideologies spreading and taking hold, impacts like the colonization in Kenya, the Einsatzgruppen, and the Cambodian genocide would have never happened. Western ideas had some positive impacts, while simultaneously colonizing other nations, creating fear of Western expansion and influencing a genocide. Today, we still see remnants of colonization. Economic disparities, systemic racism, and geopolitical instability still exist. It's the reason why places like Canada, Republic of Congo, and Guadeloupe speak French. Even though history seems to be in a distant and faraway place that no longer exists, there are still people living in it.